Now that you've gone through all the effort to make your print, let's talk about how you might want to present it. So let's cut some window mats. Welcome to the Naked Photographer, where I'll be exposing myself. No, I won't. That sounded better in my head. You can go out and you can buy a pre-cut window mat and frame, but if you're like me and you have a lot of prints that you need to do, that's really not all that economical. Besides, I don't like the quality of the mat that you get in a pre-cut frame. They tend to be a cheaper quality mat made out of paper pulp. What this can do is start to yellow and brown your print, because the acid that's left in the pulp will start to attack it after a little bit of time. I prefer to use a 100% cotton rag mat that I can get myself. So, if you're going to cut window mats, you're going to need some tools. I'm going to show you today just with some basic tools that you can get at your craft store or even online. Now, I'll start by saying I'm not sponsored by Logan. I've used their products quite a bit, so I want to show you how I do it. But they are not in any way involved with this. But if anybody from Logan is watching, call me. So this is just a simple ruler that they have with this guide on the side, and then you can get a mat cutter that's got these little clips on it, and it slides up and down, giving you a nice straight cut. You can actually get these individually on your own, but B&H is currently selling a kit with the ruler, the mat cutter, and a straight knife for like $45. Hobby Lobby is selling this alone for $35, and this for $35, and this for $13. So $45 is not a bad deal. And for $5 more, you can get the kit from B&H with the 40-inch long ruler instead of the 24-inch. That'll let you cut down a full 32 by 40-inch mat with just one cut. So that's a pretty good deal. Aside from that, Hobby Lobby does have a good deal right now on their full mat cutter. It's all in one on a set board. I want to say it's on sale from $120, I think, marked down to $65 or $70. And it's a permanent markdown. That's the best deal you can find right now on those mat cutters. Aside from that, you can use a large professional cutter. I have the Logan 650 40-inch long cutter. And it does a great job for high volume. But if you're only doing this occasionally, this will work just fine. Now, what you want to do is get your mat board, get it cut down to size, and then we're going to draw the window. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do this. The cutting part is going to be all the same, but the measuring can be done a couple of different ways. Now, some people will tell you that there are standard sizes for prints. Yes and no. It's not uncommon to find that an 8 by 10 inch print is put into an 11 by 14 inch frame. So the next size up in print, therefore an 11 by 14 would be put into a 16 by 20 inch frame, and so on. You can do that. I personally don't find the borders on a mat of that size, an 11 by 14 mat with an 8 by 10 inch print, to be generous enough. So I like to do a little bit more custom size. So I actually have cut my board to 13 inches by 15 inches. It's a little bit of an odd size, but since I'm custom framing my own anyway, it really doesn't matter. So decide what size you want and cut them down. Then we need to start figuring out, where do you want the print in the mat? If you go and get a pre-cut mat, they're dead center. That is, you have equal borders on the sides, equal borders on the top and bottom. Some people like to bottom weight their mat. That means move the print up slightly. It gives a little bit optical illusion that the print is falling down if it's placed in the center. Whether or not you do that, that's your choice. I'll show you both ways. So get your mat board, make sure you know which side is the front and back. This is actually the back because it's got the printing straight from the printer telling me what I have and how much. So this was a 32 by 40 inch board. It was being sold for $9.99. I got it with a 40% off coupon. So gave me $6 board for quite a few mats. At 13 inch by 15 inch, I can get 6 pieces total. So that's not a bad deal for $6. So you're going to deal with the back side because the Logan cutters are meant to cut from the back side of the print. Make sure if you use a different brand, you know what side to cut through. Since we're doing the Logan, it's on the back. Now, if I'm going to put this in the middle, because this first one, I'm going to center weight, then what we need to do is measure the image, not the actual piece of paper. The paper is 8 by 10, but the image itself may be slightly different. Then we need to know the side of the board. So let's begin to measure that. So I already know my board is 13 by 15. My print, while the paper is 8 by 10, the actual image area is 9 3/8 by 7 1/4. All right, so this will help me figure out my borders. So we're going to have to do a little bit of math. Now I realize if you are watching this outside of the US, you're using metric. Go ahead and do that. I am not, my ruler is not metric, so I'm going to do this with American inches. So 7 1/4 from 13, and I'm going to cheat, I'm going to use my calculator. Got 13 minus 7.25 is 5.75 divided by 2 is 2.875. That's 2 7/8. So that is 2 7/8 at the top, 2 7/8 at the bottom. So 15 minus 9.375 is 5.625 divided by 2 is 2.8125. 2 13/16 on either side. So I'm not going to actually create that. I want a little bit of overlap so that I don't accidentally see any of the white on the edge. So rather than do this exact measurement, I want to come in just a little bit. So you may not be able to see this. I'm actually going to use pencil for this because this will actually stay on the mat. So I want 2 7/8. I'm actually going to add a 1/16. Okay, now 2 7/8. Now take your print and just make sure you're overlapping just a little bit. You don't want a tremendous amount of excess border. At the same time, you want to make sure you're not accidentally measuring wrong and cutting bigger than your print area, because I will show some of the white print. You can do that intentionally if you want. Just make sure you're giving enough generous borders that it looks right. It's all about aesthetics. Okay, so now that it's measured, it's time to get ready to cut. First thing you want to get is a spare piece of mat board. If you don't have a spare, then what ends up happening is the blade on the mat cutter will shred the face of the paper, because remember, we're cutting from the back, so only a tiny piece of the blade will come through the front and it will cut. It'll tear the cut, creating a jagged window, and we don't want that. This is for presentation. We want it to look pretty. So I'm actually going to use, underneath that, my cutting board, just in case. So the procedure is fairly straightforward. You need a blade, you need the cutter. Make sure you read the instructions on how to put it all together. But you put the blade in here, and it goes, whoops, make sure you only get one blade. Does not fit two. So the blade will come through the bottom when you push down on the cutter head. It is adjustable with this little screw for the depth. You only really need to bother that if you are using something other than a 4-ply mat board, like a 2-ply or maybe thicker like an 8-ply. Ideally, what you want this to do is once you're pushed in, and it's meant for right-handers, and I'm lefty, and so I don't really like that. Push it through so it stops, and then look on the bottom. You should have just the tiniest amount, so you can see that, tiniest amount of blade protruding from the bottom. Just a small amount. If you have a lot, you have the blade's depth set too far, and if you don't have any, then you're not going to get a full cut. Something else to remember is how often you change the blades. I find I can get easily and cleanly 4 8x10 prints from one blade. So I'll cut 2 windows on one corner, then flip it over, cut 2 windows off the second corner, and then that blade is done. It's still razor sharp, it'll still cut you, but it's not sharp enough to cut the mat board without tearing. You might be able to squeeze a couple extra out, but quite frankly, I don't risk it. So I'll get 4 windows for the one blade, then I'll put the blade aside, put a new one in. The blades are not expensive. The mat board is. You can get currently at Hobby Lobby a package of 100 blades for $20 with a 40% off coupon. That's $12 for 100 blades. 100 blades will give you 400 windows of 8x10. 400 windows, $12. That is something like 3 cents per window. That's pretty cheap. This is a $10 piece of mat board. I can get 6 of them for $6. That's $1 a piece. So I can either ruin $1 or spend 3 cents. I'd rather spend the 3 cents. So use your blades as little as possible. Flip them around. Use the other corner. And keep them sharp. Now they are sharp, so safety first. Keep your hands out of the way. Now the way we want to do this is the ruler side, this is the blade side. So line up with your mark. Then these cutters are meant to push away from you. So line this little mark up with your pencil line. So you're going to go from line to line. And that is it. So make sure you've got this centered well. I want to keep it balanced. And I'm going to stand up to put a little extra pressure on it so it doesn't move. Now, a mistake I see often with people doing this for the first time is pushing down on the cutter. You don't need to. You push down with your thumb on the blade and then push forward with the cutter. If you're pushing down, you put a lot of pressure and it's harder to cut than it really should be. So I've got my marks lined up. I'm going to push the blade in and then push forward until the line gets to the next mark, then pull the blade out. And that gave me a cut all the way through. Turn it around, do the same. Again, pencil line to pencil line. Now it is tempting to go from cut to cut. You don't want to. You want to go to pencil line to pencil line. That's the way this is designed, and it will give you the best cut that way. If for some reason we have incomplete corners, we can deal with that after the fact. But I've got a loose window, so that's doing well. So last side. And there we go. So nice, clean window. Virtually no overcut, no ragged corners, straight lines. That looks good. So we'll put this that way because it's horizontal. And there we go. That would be a really well cut window mat with very little overlap of window to print. So it pretty much shows the whole thing. Now this is, let's get this out of the way so it's a little easier to see. This is a center balanced window. I have an equal border top and bottom, equal border side to side. So now let's do a bottom weighted, and we'll see how to measure that out and how that looks visually next to this. For a bottom weighted print, we have a slightly different method. You can of course just eyeball it and do whatever measurement you want, but there is a mathematical way to do this. So take the print, put it all the way up into the top corner, take your ruler, place a mark at the very edge of the paper. So I'm putting the 10-inch mark because it's easy for me to see, and measure to the edge of the board. So I've got just under 15, so that's going to be 2.5 right here. Splits this in two, and I'm going to put a mark here where the paper was. I'm going to do a second mark at the same spot at the 10, and then the 2.5. Hair off. Now draw two lines from those marks. There we go. Now place the paper back, top left corner. I'm going to do the same thing with this gap. So, and I've got the same measurement. So split it in half, mark where the paper was, final step in finding the optical center is to take your ruler, place it all the way up into where the leftmost edge of the board and the leftmost corner of the print sat, and the other corner line up with the horizontal center line and the right edge of the board, and then draw a diagonal. What we are looking for is where this diagonal line meets the center line. So that's the rightmost pencil line we drew. So that intersection is where the piece of paper goes on the rightmost corner of the paper. Not the print, not the image itself, just the paper. Line up the edge of the print with the pencil line we made here, corner here, and that gives us a vertically weighted print. So side margins are equal, top is less than the bottom. So from here we are going to measure our actual print area. So I'm going to put my mark in the same spot as before because it is actually still horizontal. or same equal measurements. So that is a 2 and 13/16, 2 13/16. My top margin is 2 3/8. My bottom margin from print to edge is 1 2 3 5/16. So I'm going to give it 3 3/8. So let's mark these up. Okay, just double check your measurements here. Looks good. That looks good. Same procedure as before. There we go. So here is a bottom weighted mat. Here's a center weighted mat. As you can see, there is definitely a difference between the two. So there you have it. You can cut a bottom weighted, you can cut a center weighted, and go from there. Which one is better? Really neither. If you buy a mat, you tend to get the center weighted. A lot of artists do like the bottom weighted, but quite frankly, I'm more inclined to do the center weighted simply because if I'm cutting mats, I'm usually cutting for an entire exhibition, and I kind of just want to speed through it. But neither is technically incorrect. So find whichever works best for you. It could be more image related rather than practical like mine. But the procedure for both is the same. It's just a matter of measuring and, of course, preference. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to The Naked Photographer, and I'll keep making videos. Next time, we're going to look at how to mount the prints into those mats. So come back then.